back to the Werewolf Bar. I'm the author of the Autobiography of a Werewolf Hunter series, Brian Easton, and this is what we call Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter. Glad you could join us this evening. First things first, the whiskey. Our creature of the night is Flintlock. It's a bourbon whiskey, claims to be the spirit of the Minnesota Territory. And just to kind of reiterate a couple of things, there's an old whiskey myth, I guess you'd call it, that in order for a whiskey to be considered bourbon, that it has to be made in Bourbon County, Kentucky. But that just isn't the case anymore, if it ever really was. Nowadays, federal standards dictate what is and what is not bourbon, what can't wear that label. And we discussed this a while back, but for a whiskey to call itself bourbon legally, its mash, that is the mixture of grains that you're distilling, has to be at least 51% corn. And then the rest of that is usually made up with barley, malted barley, or rye, or wheat. So let's try a little bit of the old Flintlock here. Now again, I am an amateur whiskey taster, but I know what I like and know what I'm looking for. So let's give this a try. To your health. That's smoky. It's got a lot of smoky flavor to it. It's got a nice finish, and I'm tasting a little honey, vanilla, maybe some fruit and spice there on the palate. It's nice. I wouldn't kick it out of bed. I do enjoy sampling different forms of the spirit. Fortunately, with all the micro distilleries around today, there's no shortage of brands to choose from. Well, tonight, Tex Grebner from the Tex Grebner Outdoors YouTube channel is with us again to discuss werewolf weaponry as used in my book series. This time, he's gone old school, and I mean really old school, with the Minister's horse pistols from the Winter Fox Journal's Book 1. Cap and ball pistols, black powder, and you'll be interested to see what he's got to show you. So here's Tex and another edition of Tools of the Trade.
Well, I had to go back and rewatch the last episode of Whiskey with the Werewolf Hunter that I was on. I'm not proud of that, but I have very little memory of recording that segment. I'm completely sober this time because we're going to be dealing with some tools of the trade for the Monster Hunter. Now this is my Cold Steel Natchez Profile Bowie knife. And first of all, when you see knife fighting tutorials, a lot of it is wishful thinking. Thing is, you would use a knife of this style about the same way as you would use a saber or most likely a cutlass. You would fence with these knives. All the flourishing and counter-striking is just asking to lose your hand at the wrist. So most of knife fighting is footwork and not getting cut and not getting stuck. But this is somewhat of a Blood Meridian starter kit, because this is a Whitneyville Colt Dragoon. Actually, this one is made by Uberti, but this is a Colt Dragoon. A Bowie knife and a Colt Dragoon both make prominent appearances in Blood Meridian, and if you paid attention in the Winter Fox journals, then you know that Reverend Black Scrabble has a pair of Colt's Dragoons, and based off of Brian Easton's love of the Blood Meridian book, I'm positive that they would have been Whitneyville. Now, one thing about this pistol is that it actually throws a rifle-powered charge, or at least a rifle-powered charge for its day. This is a mounted infantry pistol, as in meant to shoot horses and people. However, this is a .45 caliber cap and ball, not a .44, which causes all kinds of problems that you might run into if you were to actually try and load this with silver bullets. This is a Whitneyville Colt's Dragoon, as used by the Reverend Blackscrabble, and identical to the pistols of the Glanton Gang in Blood Meridian. This is a swaged lead ball. I'm going to demonstrate one of the problems with using silver conicals in a cap and ball pistol. So I'm going to throw a charge here. I'm going to throw a wad on here. Come back to half cock. Put my ball in and run it under the rammer. Now these balls are oversized. That way, when they seat, you get a good tight seal. And if you look in there close, you'll be able to see a little lead ring. That's a problem with silver bullets. So I've got this capped now. This is a cast lead bullet. It's very hard, pretty analogous to what your silver bullet might be. Now I know that this isn't going to work, so I'm not going to bother putting a powder charge in. But I'm going to seat the ball, and because this is so much harder than the soft lead, it isn't going to seat at all. You don't have enough leverage. The reason that these are oversized is because you want a good tight fit to prevent chain fires. The way that the minister would have had to load this would have been to take the cylinder off the gun and actually pound this conical into each chamber with a wooden mallet, then put the cylinder back on the gun after he had got everything seated past the cylinder. But with a silver bullet, in reality, you can't get a super cast actually seated. Now what I'm going to have to do is take the nipple out and a punch and actually drive that out. However, because we're dealing with bullets that were made in Smith's Forge, it's highly likely that the Reverend Minister Blackscrabble actually has swaged silver, but just for the hell of it, let's look at the Wolfman down here. Traditionally speaking, Colt Dragoon pistols shot high. No caps, no balls. Wanted to make sure that I showed that it was completely unloaded because, after all, Sly uses in the lineage the road agent spin, Now, I don't want to hijack the show too much this week, but there is a concept, actually two, that's been burning away at me to express on the show. The concept of a darkest noble. Now, according to the canon, this is possible. It would be the lineage equivalent of an atom bomb, but it is possible, and it would be canon. Darkest Wolven are considered prehistoric throwbacks, and I interpret that to mean that they would have the physical form, the ferocity, the strength, and the physical power of the original great beast Esau. They, however, are power without position. They have so little of the original Therion soul in their makeup that they are more ogre than rational. They also are practically immune to silver. They are either born in wolven form, or in this case, for this to work, they would be, this particular wolven creature would have been a stripling that lived until puberty, and then on their first pubescent full moon, finally ascended, but was unable to descend. So there was a human child trapped at full ascension for centuries, which is scary enough as it is. Now, it would be absolute suicide for a beast prince to actually try to mark a darkest wolven. And it is a foolish concept for someone that is a prince in the lineage to actually elevate a stripling all the way into the imperial line through a mark of provenance. But it's no stupider than British monarchs marrying movie stars and advocating the throne. So we have a real-world precedent. Now, what prince would do it? In my opinion, Ulrich Thrax would be a prime candidate for creating a darkest noble. Ulrich Thrax has a death wish. He wants to have his mortality back. He has also faced Esau in the fighting pits before, so he has the physical power because he received Esau's mark when he took Esau by the jaws. So if any prince could mark a darkest wolven, it would be Ulrich Thrax. It could be his last great act would be to mark this darkest wolven and bring back not only its sanity, but its position within the lineage, and it would be the lineage equivalent of an atom bomb. Ulrich Thrax gets a good death. Ulrich Thrax also passes on his full remaining measure of the Therion into this darkest wolven, creating a darkest noble within the imperial line. And with that being said, everything can be killed. But the idea of a darkest wolven, given the power of speech, given back its power of reason, and with the ability to manipulate eldritch forces, yeah, not a good thing. But everything can be killed. So I feel like Ulrich Thrax would be a prime candidate for the concept of creating a darkest noble, even though it would be technically an imperial darkest wolven, but it could also be the way of completing the great Colt, because it would possibly have the rage of Kunbish and hunt down the entire lineage, and that would be how Esau gets his full soul back, and it triggers the apocalypse. Now, of course, there is also another burning concept that I want to express, and that is my theory, according to the canon, about how Alaric, or Alaric, actually, quote, reincarnated. I can't buy that Alaric reincarnated. I just can't. My interpretation of it is it was not within their rights of provenance to truly destroy Alaric. But, assuming that he was given the funerary rites and he was put back in the coffin, because it was not within their rights of provenance, because he was Alaric the Elder, and it was not within their power, and it was not within their right, if they stuck his ass back in the coffin in Lucaicon, well then, he could have knitted himself back together and been rescued by the Indiana Jones-style excavations around Lucaicon, and that is how Alaric came back into a physical form. So I'm assuming that Alaric basically healed up in the coffin once his parts were put back together, and he was then released by the excavations to complete his great cull. And the reason that the Winter Fox blade was able to finally destroy him was that the meteoric iron was given to the Winter Fox line to destroy the lineage. The song is a call to war. It is the battle cry against not just Lucane, but the entire lineage itself. And so it was not within their power, so it was not within their right to destroy Alaric in full. He knitted himself back together and was finally killed by the Winter Fox blade because it was given from a provenance higher than that of the Immaculate Evil of Esau. At least those are my canon-ish theories.
Thanks for that field demonstration, Tex. And I can tell you a lot of hops number 9 powder solvent went into the cleaning of that hog leg that you just saw. Just by way of follow-up, this is a replica of a Walker Colt, kind of the big brother of the Dragoon Tex just showed us. In fact, it's even made by the same company, Uberti, which is an Italian company. They do a great job doing replicas of Old West firearms, pistols, rifles, shotguns even. So the Walker is a little bit bigger, it's a little bit longer than the Dragoon, but most people agree that the Dragoon was an improvement over the Walker Colt. But essentially, and for our purposes, it's the same gun. Now, Tex showed us the difficulty involved in loading the minister's silver 44 caliber conical projectiles using the built-in ramrod lever here. And I just, they both have it. The Dragoon and the Walker both have that same built-in ramrod. And I just wanted to say a couple of things about that. So if you want to say that the minister removed the cylinders from his Dragoons in order to load them, you'd be right. And it is mentioned during the gunfight with the army deserters that he had spare cylinders loaded, capped, and ready to go. Firstly, pure silver is a very soft metal. In fact, it's too soft to make anything functional out of, whether you're talking about jewelry or bullets, especially bullets. So it's hardened into sterling silver by alloying it with copper, zinc, or nickel. So if you start off with pure silver, a master silversmith and armorer, especially one with the literary licensed credentials of Smith's Forge, is going to have no trouble alloying that pure silver into the correct hardness needed to fit the minister's Whitneyville Colt, Killsback Widow's Mare's Leg, or Laughing Dog's Henry Rifle. Okay, but if you start with sterling, then it's kind of the reverse situation, and the metal has to be annealed to the degree necessary to get a good seat on that bullet when you're loading it up with the ramrod, as well as to make it functional. Again, something Smith's Forge is known for, not just in the creation of the bullet itself, but in the loading of it, which is almost as important as we see in the lineage when Sylvester visits Pakistan's Wild West gun town. So just wanted to briefly follow up Tex's field demonstration with that little aside. So just a quick update for you. I am moving forward on the second Winter Fox journals very rapidly. Currently about halfway through chapter 3, where we are officially in the trenches on the Western Front in the First World War. Michael has grown from a kid that we saw in the first book with a kid's limitations into a fighting man who can finally make full use of his Radosnan skills and really stretch his legs. Now remember, Michael Winterfox has enlisted in the Canadian Expeditionary Corps for the sole purpose of concealing his advance upon the beast, Prince Lucane, the Spaniard werewolf who started the feud between Michael's ancestors and the lineage, and also Sylvester's ancestors. So I'm exploring different concepts from the first book and doing my best to describe the Great War, the White Man's War, as was prophesied that Michael would enter. And Winter Fox has thrown himself into the fray, and I'll be bringing you more updates about that as I progress. So next month is our Halloween show, where Dr. T. Broussard and I will both be recounting a few personal stories that might put a chill down your spine. And I don't think you'll want to miss that. One more for the road. And that's going to do it for me tonight. You can find us on the web at werewolfhunter.com. And before you go, hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hey, thanks for being with us. And until next time, happy hunting and mind the moon.